Thanks for joining. I'm Bill Quinn, and I have some amazing guests with me today. Cathy O'Brien, Lynne Scott Haggermann, and Professor David Clements. First, thank you all for making time today. I think we are in a very unique moment, and I think it's important for us to get together and perhaps share some things that I hope will build understanding. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Some of the folks that I think will watch our discussion may not know the background on that you all have lived through and experienced. And so I wanted to begin with helping them understand your experiences, your background, where you came from. And I'd like to start, if we could, Cathy, with you. I know you've been talking about things that are now becoming oh so real to many people, and you've been doing it an awful long time. So if you could give us a quick background on yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for pulling this panel together. Lynn is just, and David, and wow, this is just such a wonderful opportunity to get comprehensive truth brought to light. I've been speaking out on MK Ultra mind control and healing from it for over 35 years. And I was used on a White House Pentagon level in my victimization. I was deep in the Washington, D.C. swamp among perpetrators who steal elections, who use drug and human trafficking across open borders to fund their globalist agenda, and who are using mind control to usher in a slave society agenda that's attacking our humanity and dumbing us down to align us with artificial intelligence. That I know from my experience in mind control that without free thought, there's no free will. Without free will, we lose our moral compass. We lose our soul expression. We lose our discernment of truth and our ability to align with the divine within and gather the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. So ultimately, mind control is a spiritual battle. It's one that has been going on for my whole life. And it's so good that people are finally seeing it now, because awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. And I'm constantly reminding people that what they're seeing isn't new. What's new is that they're finally seeing it. And it's up to each and every one of us to embrace this truth so we can take responsibility and start protecting our children. They're counting on us.
That's right. It is about the children, isn't it?
Yes.
Lynn, could you spend a few minutes and give folks the benefit of your background, your experiences, because I know they go back a long time.
Yes, they do. So I was in a child trafficking house from the time I was born until I was 5 years old. And it was a regional trafficking house attended by people in religious garb, law enforcement, physicians, business women, businessmen, all walks of life. It was ran by a former military man who was completely insane. I describe it as a POW camp because none of us wanted to be there, and we were at their whim, whatever they wanted to do. It was also a feeder hub. It was a feeder system into the University Medical Center, where I was also taken, where they did have underground laboratory, above ground, they have child slave auctions to pedophiles. And then underground, they have the laboratories where they experiment on the children for MK Ultra mind control programming. There was also adrenochrome harvesting and organ harvesting. And so that was my childhood. I also went to satanic rituals, both at the local, regional, and national level. They have conventions just like we do, but they're very different from ours. I was also in the DUMS. I equate, so people understand the University Medical Center. It's below ground. Our universities, they look exactly like above ground, and I equate that to the Nazi concentration camps because after World War II, through Operation Paperclip, the Nazis were imported into the United States and put in all of our systems, which brings us where we're at today. And that includes in the healthcare system. And I would like to add too that from the spiritual side, angels were always there. I would see angels, demons, God was always there. Jesus, I went to heaven a lot, still do, still see all that. I live a very supernatural lifestyle and have incredible spiritual gifts because people who are recruited into the MK Ultra programs are very gifted and talented, intelligent children that are selected at birth and in early ages. And they're taught to have these special gifts like time travel and remote viewing and all kinds of gifts. So, but I survived that. And today, I'm an award-winning international human resource consultant, a published author, a marathoner, a weightlifter, and grateful to be here.
Well, bless you for being here, and thank you for that. Professor Clements, please, if you could give us, I know you've been through a lot in these last, 5 years now, and so please give us your background and how we come to be here together, please.
Yeah, well, it's hard to follow up these two lovely women and what they've been through. So in some respects, I'm just so thrilled to see the Epstein revelations come to light and the level of vindication for people that have suffered and that have been marginalized. And, all of the accusations of being conspiracy this and conspiracy that, it's really great to see. I don't have trauma on the same level as Lynne or Cathy from the standpoint of, just the real hellishness of what they've been put through. But as a prosecutor, I was able to see things up close and personal. I'd be lying to you if I had a full picture. It's like almost the horrors were little bits and pieces where there could have been something larger at play. But as a state prosecutor, we had all kinds of cases, child sex cases that still give me, I still get flashes on evidence that I've had to examine in preparation for trial. Trafficking is something that I've had to deal with at the border. I was a border prosecutor here in New Mexico, which is very, very famous for lots of different reasons. Epstein's Zorro Ranch, his affinity for PhDs at the national labs is all kind of central to New Mexico. So I would say that I think I've gotten a front row seat from a law enforcement prosecution standpoint. But the full horror of it all really has come front and center over the last 10 years of my life. And so I've tried to be there for victims as a prosecutor. We had victim advocates, and I would always tell people our cases were only as strong as our victims. And if, so you kind of put on thick skin, and sometimes you act stronger than you really are, because hell, if people can survive the torture and still get on the stand and raise their right hand, then there's a duty and obligation to stand with them. So yeah, hundreds and hundreds of cases, violent crimes, sex cases, you name it. I've tried them at some level or another. And, but that's my law enforcement background. And then I had a brief career as a law professor until I got canceled for telling the truth.
And you spent the remainder of the last 5 years fighting for that truth, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't always feel like I'm winning, but I think I put up the good fight, I think.
Well, I understand exactly what you mean. I've been witness to you presenting to a number of political boards over the last couple, 3 years, and without exception, they always seem to, in some way, in my mind, be fearful of what you have to say, because it's often spiritually based, but is an appeal to righteousness in the face of what they are doing or failing to do. And so it's been fascinating to watch. So a number of things came out really from all of you, and that is one of the things that I sense is people are being astounded by the breadth of the implications of what's being disclosed. Cathy, you mentioned politicians and notable figures from around the world. Lynne, you talked about being near and underneath universities and others. And just in the last few days, there's people resigning from positions because their name is associated all of a sudden with one or more of the Epstein files. There's people that are notable in celebrity ranks. The Prime Minister of Norway attempted suicide, and other things. And there are people that have actually committed suicide over this. And it begs the question that people are asking: how broad is this, and how did it get to be so? Some are claiming that there's connections to Epstein's network, not always just to him, in the millions. And it begs the question: how in the heck did something get so big? Let me do the same round robin and ask for your comments about how did this grow as big as it appears to be emerging. Cathy?
Secrecy has allowed for it to proliferate all this time. When we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the U.S. in the wake of World War II, with them came the formula for mind control. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. So information was immediately suppressed. The National Security Act came into play, and the National Security Act can cover up any crime, especially those that are involving the MK Ultra mind control agenda, because ultimately this globalist agenda is to create a compliant society and dumb us down. And it's been going on for a long time. It's taken generations for this to creep in. People have been conditioned. When they understand mind control, they'll start to understand how this happened, because we've been subliminally conditioned for generations. And if we look at the Project Paperclip, we find that Walt Disney was right there with Project Paperclip. And you wonder, what does a child's cartoon have to do with NASA? Mind control. Disney is notorious now for MK Ultra mind control, the underground DARPA military NASA installations in the underground of Disney World are becoming notorious. Disney's synonymous with MK Ultra, especially in the entertainment industry. When we look at the Britney Spears and the Michael Jacksons, and it's all starting to come out. But when we look at something that has been around as long as Disney, and look back on those very first those very first cartoons, they're already subliminally introducing pedophilia and the acceptance of rape of children into it. When we understand that's not a sexual preference, when we understand our own mind-brain function, we know that it is deliberately a mind control agenda. This pedophile agenda being pushed is just to make a compliant society. And Disney was very much complicit in that from the get-go. So that's one little area where that crept in. Then we consider the education system. And it was in 1984, we put in global education, now called Common Core. It was patterned after Hitler's youth, and it was to indoctrinate the children on what to think rather than teach them how to think. We took writing by hand out of the school system, because when we move a pen, it activates the logic critical analysis part of our brain. And that's the part where we process information and think about it and question and reason. So by putting writing by hand back into the school system, we'll teach children how to think again, and we can stop the indoctrination of the children. With that indoctrination, of course, came the sexualization of children. Parents didn't stand up against it because they had been conditioned subliminally to accept it for generations now. Watching all this unfold, being behind the scene with these perpetrators, these global high-level perpetrators that are named in my testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. It was easy for me to start to see what their plan was and how it's unfolding. And right now, at this point, it's also easy to see how far they've lost it. It's over. It's game over. Too many people are awake and aware. They've lost that control, and they're fighting with everything they got right now in their last little tantrums, trying to reclaim that control. But I haven't been around them and hearing how the plans were set up to infiltrate into society. That was
Mm.
first discussed at Mackinac Island, Michigan, where these global perpetrators would meet and discuss the fate of humanity and how to infiltrate all the sacred aspects of society with MK Ultra mind control, how to get it in the schools, how to infiltrate churches, how they were going to do that. It was all planned in these places. These perpetrators don't trust each other either, so they hold each other by the blackmail, so to speak. The blackmail vaults that we hear about, this is how they keep each other in line. And being part of any secret society where secrets on mind control are kept, like the Masonic lodges, that's just part of the indoctrination. Oh, this is just the way we indoctrinate you in. And it's filmed and it's blackmail forever. So this has been going on. Now we're hearing about Epstein Island. And I'm saying all the way when I was a little bitty toddler, this was back like in 1960. Mackinac Island, Michigan was the Epstein Island of its time. Moved to Bohemian Grove. It moved to different places throughout the Caribbean, different parts in the Virgin Islands where the Epstein Island was being established. What was going on in Haiti with the Clintons and setting up the child sex trafficking there. It was all part of it. So it's been slowly creeping in for a long time. And the history on it, when we start cleaning this mess up, we're going to find that we have some very deep roots to pull up. But above all, we've got to understand our own mind-brain function in order to understand how we got to this point and evolve with knowledge that is our defense against mind control. When we have that knowledge, we don't comply anymore. So it's imperative that we get this information out there. And thanks to shows like this one, that information is getting out there, awareness is rising, and the Great Awakening is happening on a global scale as a result.
Yeah. I made a note on a couple of themes. We'll come back to those in a couple of minutes. Lynn, let me ask you the same question.
I'll start with the University Medical Center and how I think that this has been so proliferate. In a couple of years ago, the National Security Archives released 1,500 new documents never before released. I sent them to Cathy whenever I heard about them because I said, are these really new? Or because she would know because she knows everything. Or are these like regurgitated information? She said, no, they're new. Mm-hmm. And whenever I researched them, you can see the CIA reached out. They wanted to develop the mind control program here, and they wanted to hire the best of the medical people in the United States. And they said at first they reached out to a few and they were appalled, like, this is unethical. You want to experiment on US citizens unknowingly, children, adults. You want to try to control their minds. This is unethical. This is wrong. But the CIA in these documents said that in short order, they found practically everyone they asked to participate said yes, because they said it would further science. And they wanted to go where no man had gone before, to control people by controlling the human brain. And that's what kicked it all off. And our government, our tax dollars, funded the expansions of the universities, funded the development of these underground laboratories. So they're all in, and they're all in by the money that they receive. Money fuels so much, the power that they receive, and willing participants, including, when I was a little girl, I would see the medical staff. There would be doctors and nurses in surgical garb. There would be med techs. There would be government employees, flat screen TVs with government employees watching. They were all in on it together for the purpose that they wanted. Their purpose was to control mankind, and they were very determined to do it. And so secrecy was easy for them because they had a goal. Now, when it came to the trafficking house, I remember whenever, as processing through this trauma, constantly when I was teeny, I was terrified of jail. And I had no idea why, but I knew it was a horrible place. Everybody was terrified of it because I was constantly hear them say different things about jail, and they were so terrified. Well, of course they were, because they knew if they were caught that they would be arrested and imprisoned. Although, of course, we're finding out that's not actually the case, since our judicial system is completely unjust. But they still feared it. And so what they would do with the children, they all participated together. it's not a one-off thing. They were all fully aware of what each other was doing. They would do it in groups. They would do it in parties. We were all exposed to that earlier recently with the P. Diddy parties. So that was part of their horrific, heinous crimes against the children. And we're hearing horrible stories come out of the Epstein files of, recent 9-year-old girl that was pregnant, and what the men did to the baby when it was born. And there were 379 of them. I mean, this is what they do. They're not like us. These heinous crimes against the children. They do it together. They enjoy it. And blackmail's part of it. But what I saw as a little girl, it wouldn't have taken much blackmail because they were all willing participants covering each other. And so I want to take a moment to bring it to present day, because now that I speak out all the time and I have such a big voice on my platform, I have a lot of people reaching out to me with problems. And you had mentioned the church earlier, I believe, but this is prevalent everywhere. So I had someone reach out to me recently and discovered that in the church nursery in the school, all the children had been harmed for a long, long time, all ages, babies on up. And pastor was involved, attorneys were involved, doctors were involved, judicial system was involved, and they had such a clamp down on all of the systems that people were terrified of speaking up because they'd enter the unjudicial system and they'd be destroyed. So it's a web, and it's a web of all levels of society covering each other at local levels. And these are in small towns. This is any town USA. And they have each other's backs because of the huge amount of money they can make and the sadistic pleasure that they take. And they're Luciferians. They worship, Baal. And they take that very seriously to harm children and in many different ways. Epstein's, one of his bank accounts was called Baal. Mm-hmm. So this is what they do. So it's the secrecy and it's the blackmail, but it's also as Cathy said, their club. They do it as a group. They cover each other, and they know fully well the consequences that might happen if they're exposed.
Wow, we are touching so many areas of culture, of religion, of belief. David, I know you've come at this in the last few years from an election, at least in part from an election integrity standpoint, yet more and more each day it reflects, probably with reason, into the spiritual. So I know you've done an awful lot of work in looking for parallels and looking at connections, looking for influences. Take us through your thinking about how this is so possibly broad across the world.
Well, I like to think of what would be the chief goal of the top. If we were thinking about evil cartels and there's a hierarchy, you go to the top. And if you believe in God, I think you should at least entertain the idea of believing in Satan, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that Satan is consumed with grieving the heart of God. God loves life. He loves liberty. He loves freedom. He loves families. And so there's nothing that gives Satan more of a perverse joy than to kill, steal, and destroy. That's his mandate. So there's something about that separation, that rebellion that's eons old, that they have mastered with great efficiency how to spread their Leviathan-like, tentacles everywhere to squeeze. This is not hard for evil to undertake. I think that's probably lost on a lot of people because they're always focusing on the human vessel as the chief manifestation. It's really not. It's something that's far more dark, far more sinister, that takes hold of something that might have been innocent at some point, mm-hmm. and turned it and made it more like itself. And so in some respects, I think people are like, how could this come to be? How could these networks be so pervasive? How could it be, this many people? And and I guess my response to that is evil's been around forever. I mean, the cosmic kind, right? And so I think one of the things that I've been remarking upon over the past 10 years is how much truth is in those old fairy tales. You know, the idea of the vampire, you have to invite them in before they can have access. And so you can say, well, what are you talking about? Well, invitation for our eyes and our ears to take in content that can change you. I think of the pornography epidemic that dehumanizes women and men. And whether you want to call that demon possession, the amount of time that people take to consume something that's so damaging to their soul, it's still a form of possession, right? So it's like as if we're just going to throw everything at you, see what sticks, and then you've got to deal with the shame, because if you were tempted and you did see something that you didn't want, perhaps the way they get you is guilt through proximity. And so you can kind of see how this thing grows. I went out and had dinner with so-and-so, and then we find out they're in the emails. And the next thing you know, the person that went to dinner with the person in the emails, you're not hearing from them on social media. And that's kind of what it feels like right now. It's the kind of the calm before the storm where, there's a few arrests, but given what we've seen in the Epstein files, I'm still shocked at how little people are talking about it. Like, we just know it's so gross and so dark that we're going to get caught up in the Candace Owens, Erica Kirk drama, or we're going to get caught up in Tucker versus Mike Huckabee on Israeli foreign policy. And when you're looking at the laundry list of horrors, all of that should take a back seat to the atrocities that we're seeing through the Epstein files. So I don't know what it's going to take. And then the other thing that I'll say is that the enemy has a penchant for, once the gig is out of the bag, to start flooding the zone with fake information. So people will attach to something, they'll talk about it, and if it's an AI deep fake, they just try to give you as much bad information to where you're going to be hesitant or reluctant to say anything about anything, because you don't want to be wrong about commenting on X, Y, and Z. And so I actually saw that during the Butler assassination. We were trying to have security teams figure out what the heck happened. And we noticed that there were so many doctored videos about angles and perpetrators that were put on Fox News. And I think it was absolutely purposeful and intentional to give you so many different things that you had to unpack, that you could never find your compass. You can never find your North Star. And I'm fearful that that's what's happening right now. You're going to have some of the most salacious things that are going to be injected into, something. And I think that's one of the strategies that we have to be on the lookout for, is just flood the zone with the most ridiculous stuff. And that's going to be hard for people, because our discernment levels are going to have to come up a few notches, because the stuff is so outrageous from what I've heard. And there's still discussion about there being more caches of documents and videos that Epstein apparently placed all over the country. And so I'm hoping that all of this stuff has already been seized, and that these aren't new revelations. This is just a form of declassification, a sequential structure to red pill the American people and bring them along. Yeah. That's what I hope. But, since I'm not there at the White House, I have no idea. This is just on intuition. But what I can tell you is this, is that even without, the inside knowledge about all of these things that are being released on a local level, just here at the border, I can tell you, I've been in courtrooms where the judge came out and he had white powder on his nose. I've worked task force that have been wholly infiltrated by the cartels. I've seen public defenders that were on the dole for the cartels. I've seen district attorneys that were on the take from the cartels. And so I had a front row seat to seeing corruption, and having to make a choice to step away from being a prosecutor for a while, because I didn't know how to go about my job when there was greater evil inside my office than the evil I was pursuing outside of that office. So maybe not as salacious as the things that you're going to find in the Epstein files, but what I can tell you is that, as Lynn mentioned, in Sleepy Town, New Mexico, I've been at places where I'm like, okay, I'm never going to do a drug case if I can help it going forward, because my office is complicit. They're selling drugs out of the evidence locker when no one's looking. Give me like a dead body and some other type of case, and I'll do that. And then you'll find the unequal way that cases are tried, where if you're a high level official, probably a Freemason, you get preferential treatment. And the judges will literally change their behavior with you. It's night and day. So if you're a nobody, a drug dealer that's abused someone, and you're disposable, that's a pretty easy case to try. But I've had cases where, it's the city council's son, and you'd think that I did something to personally insult the judge, and like night and day. And I've seen that. And then and even the mentors that I had, I got 8 first-degree murder convictions, and I was mentored by one of the best prosecutors on planet Earth. And when I brought to him the findings on the rigged and stolen election of 2020, he was a different person. It's hard to explain. It's as if I finally discovered evil that he might have been plugged into on some level that I couldn't have fathomed. And so I think there's something along those lines. When you start getting to the power brokers of the world, the people that get the keys to determine how the economy works, who gets to have, this foray over here, this drug over there, the rules changed. And I'm kind of ashamed at how much I missed, if that makes sense.
I think we all look back and say, gosh, why didn't I see this earlier? Me not the least of which. There's 2 data points I wanted to offer based on a couple things that you mentioned. The notion that why is this focused so much around children? Laura Logan, I was lucky enough to meet Ms. Logan about a year ago down at Mar-a-Lago, and I had seen an interview that she gave, and she reported a conversation she had with someone else. I think I know who she spoke to, but I'll keep that away for the moment. And in that conversation, she reported she had asked the question, why is this always around children? And the answer that she reported was because the children are the most innocent among us. They are the nearest, the most recent entries into what we call the world. And they've most recently left whatever is beyond what we call the world. And perhaps that makes them most close to God, until they become attuned to living in our world. And they one of the belief systems that apparently these other people, and I'll use the word people reservedly, carry is the wish to harm, and I think you mentioned harm the relationship with God, to do everything they can to create an affront to God, to go against everything that God wishes. And in some cases that plays out in the harm to children. The other thing that you mentioned was proximity. And I think it was just today or yesterday, Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee mentioned that he's a very calm speaking gentleman. And he said, well, it just seems like, you get these people in together and something, translates or transmits from one to another and grows among these people and kind of pervades across the group, and you get more and more of them. And that seems to be a concerning thing, but perhaps that is one of the ways that these people become ingrained in this. Cathy, you had mentioned the word infiltration, and I think in the posts that many people are aware of now, the Q posts, they say in several cases, infiltration rather than invasion. And so it would imply that it's easier to infiltrate quietly, silently, secretly, than to invade overtly and draw attention to yourself. So we'll end up getting into a bit more of them, perhaps some of the horrors, just so people can begin to get used to those concepts. I don't want to go down that path too far, but I don't want it to be sensational. But what we're going to see are, in many cases, I think, are so far beyond what people would even think as horror. They'll be in a quandary as to how people could even do this. What is it that's driving them? Do you sense that people are, in fact, being driven by something other than their normal human spirit? Is there something in them, controlling them, pushing them to do things that the rest of us would consider an abomination in some cases? Cathy, what do you think?
Absolute mind control has affected so much of society. And when we understand the sliding scale of it, from the kind of torturous, robotic MK Ultra mind control I experienced to information control, because we all formulate our thoughts, opinions, and ultimately actions based on what we know, we start to see how much of society has been manipulated. If we understand how our brains respond to trauma, that the neuron pathways in the brain actually physically shut down and leave the subconscious mind wide open to being easily led and manipulated, especially by a repetitive media narrative. We start to see how people can be easily manipulated. The Kennedy assassination, that was a national trauma that affected so many, many people. And while they were in an absolute state of trauma, we were barraged with a repetitive media narrative that it was the one bullet theory, and anybody questioning that media narrative was called a conspiracy theorist. That's where that term came from, and when that term was born. We also had the electronic voting machines came into play in the wake of the Kennedy assassination. It's when these perpetrators took over so strong and infiltrated our society and set up elections to infiltrate even further. So the electronic voting machines were rigged since their inception to place key perpetrators in key positions of power and influence in order to continue perpetuating this infiltration on society, on humanity, this infiltration into our minds to inhibit our ability to live our life's purpose, to live the love we are, to gather the strength of the human spirit. Having been around those perpetrators, their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. It's too high of a vibration for them. They can't reach it. They're a very low vibration, dark, negative energy force. They are not like us. They do not like us. Doesn't matter what we call them, if we call them demons or aliens or whatever we want to call them. The point is they are not like us, and they're this low vibration that fears the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. It's our saving grace. It's our victory. We have been born with that victory. You know, we just need to reclaim our free thought in order to think, to access, to go within and look at that instead of looking outside ourselves to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult religion to tell us how to live our lives. We have been blessed with the truth within us, the victory within us all along. We need to go within, quiet our minds, and listen. People sometimes be so busy frantically praying they forget to listen to the answer that we receive, that has already been given to us and is within us. We have so much that these perpetrators fear. So they come at us from so many different directions in order to stop us from looking at them. It's always pointing the finger the other way. It's always keeping us looking outside ourselves and looking to, oh no, look over there, here's something else. We almost saw, I thought we were going to see some justice with the Tim Walz situation in Minneapolis. But no, as soon as that happened the next day, they had to have an ICE shooting that was, the media just ramped up into a distraction for everybody. So then people weren't paying attention to the crime anymore. So people have been conditioned for so long by this mind manipulation that they're easily led by it now. And it just takes a slight diversion over here, and that's where they go. And the information that's coming at us is like drinking from a fire hose. You know, we can't even digest it all because it's so much. And
Mhm.
it's creating an inability to think our way through it. So the ways that society has been infiltrated has all been through the human mind, because we haven't understood our defense against mind control is knowledge of what these perpetrators are deliberately doing to shut down the neuron pathways in our brain. We need those neuron pathways open. We need them firing properly. We need to be using these brilliant minds we've been blessed with, because our brains have been made perfect. And we need to start using it, instead of letting others influence and undermine it and manipulate it and infiltrate it. That's the ultimate infiltration. And the evil that is behind it, no matter how we define it, is not like us at all. And it's trying desperately to bring us down to that very low level vibration, that dark. When we realize their dark can't creep in on our light, that our light exposes what they're doing in the darkness, we'll gather that strength of spirit and shine the light and, eradicate this darkness once and for all. The children need us to do it now. We're in a mental and spiritual evolution, and they can't wait for this corrupt system to clean up. They can't wait for everybody on the planet to wake up. They need the majority of us who are awake and aware to take that responsibility and start protecting our children.
Yeah. Lynn, I see you shaking your head. I know from our previous discussions that you've spoken of things that seem to control and drive people in particular directions. Tell us your thoughts there, please.
So I share what I saw and what I know. I remember, I started being trafficked from the time I was born. And I know, as a little girl, I knew exactly where I came from. I came from God and I came from heaven, and I knew that. And if you ask any little one, and by that I mean like under 5 years old, and you'll hear them say, "There's Jesus," because they see him. Or when they're terrified and they've got, um, monsters in the closet, believe them. They're seeing demons. They'll see angels. They see God. And I had a friend who's high up in the Department of Re-education, and she said that part of what they do is whenever they get them in the school system, they teach out and train out any connection that we have to the spiritual side, because they can't control the children. They can't control society as long as we're connected. So whenever I was little, I would see God was there, Jesus was there, angels was there, demons were there, just like people. And there was no difference to me. I mean, they were all the same. And I didn't realize that one was a spiritual side, one was a physical side, because they were just all there. And it's still true to this day for me, all those things. And when you look at the evil side, I just described what I saw. Every evil person had a demon, and they would either be stuck to their side or coming out of their mouth and coming back in. And I'll still see that kind of thing today. And normally they would be about their height, maybe a little bit higher. They're very charcoal, because they've been burned up in hell. Satan and his demons, the Lord Jesus Christ defeated them on the cross. They're defeated. They've lost, and they know it. All these evil entities, they absolutely know it. And the people, I've been asked this. The demons don't control the people and force them to do things. They whisper in their ear, they help guide and direct, but the people are willing participants. They agree to do these things. They want to do these things, but they are very demonic. And I would also see Baphomet. So Baphomet was in the adrenochrome harvesting rooms, and it's the only place I saw him. It's terrifying. And he would be in the adrenochrome harvesting rooms. And Baphomet is the goat man who's got a goat head and then a man bottom, and he's terrifying. And he was the little girl in me would describe him as large and in charge, because he ruled the adrenochrome harvesting both at the university and in the trafficking house. And he was, you know, I know pictures today, they'll show the mixed genitalia, and that's not true. Unfortunately, I would know exactly what those were when I was that little, and he does not have those. So somehow the enemy has infiltrated and tried to make Baphomet more large and in charge than he really was. And also, I never saw wings, and I saw wings whenever angels have wings. I know demons do too, because I've heard them try to come down my fireplace. But so I would see Baphomet, and this is all very real, and it's still real and true today. So one day, for example, I was at the gym, and there was a woman checking in, and she was beautiful on the outside, but really mean. And when I went to follow her into the locker room, and I saw wolf hair on the bottom half of her legs. And that was the first time I learned that I had the gift of telepathy, which whenever we talk to God, it's telepathy. We're not, you know, I mean, I hear his audible voice at times, most people don't, but you're talking in the spirit.
Mhm.
And so when I saw her wolf hair on her legs, I said, lady, and this was telepathy. It just started happening. I said, did you know you've got wolf hair on the bottom of your legs? I said, I did. It was so shocking. And she turned around and she looked at me, and through telepathy, because in heaven, you know, spoiler alert, nobody moves their lips, just saying. So she looked at me and she goes, yeah, and I like it. So these people, I mean, to me, that's a lesson. They like what they have inside them, what's happening, what they're doing, the evil that they're doing. So it's
Yeah.
not like anyone's forcing them or making them. They really like it. And one more thing, when it comes to the dark side, whenever I was 3, so God will, I call it time traveling, because I'm not sure what else to call it. But and I do all this with the Lord. I don't do any of my spiritual gifts without him. But he'll take me into the future. He'll take me in the past. And when I was 3 years old, he took me to hell. And there was a doctor in the trafficking house that would administer drugs to the children because the different perpetrators had different proclivities. And God took me to hell with it. And I saw the doctor. And the doctor was, and this was in the past, it would be in the future, because I was 3 and I saw the future of the doctor, pardon me. And he was in hell, and he was on one of those spits that they roast pigs on, and there was a demon on either side of him, and they were, you know, again, these big black charcoal things, and they were returning that thing. And every now and then a demon would spit, and they would spit out gasoline, and the flames would just go high. And that doctor was in so much pain that he never screamed, because he was beyond that, and that was his eternity. So when it comes to the Epstein files, people, first of all, in my opinion, from what I saw, they have a living hell on earth, because they do not have the joy of the Lord. They have no peace. They have no happiness. They're in a true living hell. And then unless they repent and come to the Lord Jesus Christ, that's exactly where they're going. And I've seen it. And I've been there a few times. But that's the demonic side of this, from my
Wow.
experience.
David, I think you've begun to explore some of the texts, some of the spiritual texts that have not typically been included in what we call the Bible today. But I find it fascinating that even in the I'll call it the here and now, folks like Representative Anna Paulina Luna are calling out that there are some connections that she won't yet disclose. I'm hoping we're not too far away from whatever they have to have hidden still. But some connections between themes from things like the Book of Enoch and what we have wondered about with regard to UFOs and UAPs and, you know, interdimensional creatures and whatever this all is. But there seems to be some overlaps, and I find it really fascinating that it goes back to books that I believe, if we study enough, we'll find out they were removed by Constantine and perhaps during the meeting of Nicaea from the Bible, and in some cases were hidden away in places like the along with the deep Dead Sea Scrolls, and found later on, and yet they predate in many cases the Bible itself. And so what do you find are the signals about something beyond what we see and measure in our world that may be influencing these people, controlling them, perhaps driving them, deceiving them, however you want to describe it?
Well, it's kind of interesting because listening to Cathy and Lynne, their experiences are so different than mine, but I found it wise to never argue with someone's human experience. And that includes people that don't have my faith walk. Because there might be something, from a DMT trip. I know that a lot of people that have accessed what I would refer to as second heaven. And whether you want to say that's all just up here, whether it's an actual spiritual being, I've got a good guess on what I believe it to be. But the point is that it's just foolish to argue with something that someone believes for whatever reason. So in some respects, I'm kind of like diagnosing my good friends here on their experience. And I think part of why it's probably easier to not identify with meticulous kind of a theological lens is because the church itself has been used as such a vibrant conduit for abuse. And so if you've been subjected to sexual trauma, and in many respects, the Epstein emails talked about Jesus being used. You've got these kids praying to Jesus, and these evil people would then abuse the children as Jesus. And so I can't help but think that that would create such a soul fracturing event that I don't know how you come back to that absent, a meeting with your creator in a way where you're perfectly loved and perfectly protected.
Yeah.
And so I think people just need to come to grips with, we kind of have a formula. We kind of talk around these things. We place them in categories. But the human experience of trauma, in many respects, Satan is so evil. He'll utilize things that we think should be shiny pillars of light to bring about maximum pain. And then with Lynne, I don't have her supernatural gifts. I've had a handful of supernatural experiences, but they're limited. I know I'm not a seer. I think my gift, if I had to describe it, would just be an intuition. I'm a deep feeler when I'm around people, and it served me well. But I've experienced enough to want to figure out and make sense of the world that I live in. And you've got, these stories of the watchers that are referred to in the book of Enoch. They're also referenced in Genesis 6 as taking part in a rebellion against God. At some point, I think they're utilizing all kinds of technology of the day. I'm also of the mind that the advancements back then are probably far superior than the things that we're observing today. And I've got a reason for that. But, just keep in mind, over the past 200 years or 100 years, we've seen, the combustible engine, we've seen airplanes, we've seen neural networks, chips, and all those things, all within this hyper intense 150 years. And we don't live to be 150 years, yet we're told in the days of Adam and Methuselah, you had lifespans that were upwards of 900 years. And so you're actually working with a genetic code that is closer to, walking in the cool of the day, if you will, with God Almighty. So they had fuller revelation. So the stuff that Adam and Eve had to have encountered and understood without all of the mutations, without all of the radiation, without all the things that happen post, Rebellion 1 or the flood, tells me that within decades, they could probably learn or bring into existence much of the technology that we think is, it's only in our lifetimes. And so you're seeing this great cataclysmic event where these humanoid hybrids, these genetic meddlers, lose their bodily form. And so then we're introduced to this idea of what are these disembodied spirits? And I think those disembodied spirits have found different vessels over the years. And I certainly think we're going to battle with them right now. But it seems like whatever deal they made in rebellion against God, that eternal life was taken off the table, meaning they had to start figuring out how to replenish what it is that they lost. And so you start getting into the things that we're seeing in the Epstein files with consumption and cannibalism and adrenochrome, these things that keep these damaged spiritual vessels alive. And yet we're seeing humans that also are afraid of death because of, we're not living past 120 years and whatnot. So whether it's the flood, whether it's the Tower of Babel, which was another consolidation of tech and defiance and rebellion, which required God to knock humanity down a peg. It just seems like there's always been this pension that we need to replenish ourselves in a way where we can still rebel, but it usually involves sacrificing children, eating blood, all of the things that are horror stories. And you fast forward to the year 2026, what are we seeing? There's some demonic undercurrent of these disembodied spirits or their progeny or their creation. I mean, there could be just clones that don't have a soul or a spirit as the way that we would identify it, but it's like a gross, bizarre circus of experiments. But there seems to be a consistent undercurrent where people that have made their deal with the devil need the resources that living, vibrant people produce. And you look at the miracle that is a child, you'd see why that would be so attractive to devils and demons.
Yeah.
So there is a system architecture. And if truth is something that lasts over eons and decades and centuries, then I think we should pay attention to, if you want to call them fairy tales or the scriptures. I certainly don't think that the scriptures are fairy tales. I think they are the true fairy tales, if you will. And then I think the thing that's incumbent upon us as far as how to do battle with this evil is that we are given authority as image bearers of God. We have authority. The question is, where do we get our power from? And sometimes we become powerless when we give in through omission and we choose not to speak. We choose not to fight back. We become something more akin to the darkness that we're fighting. So sunlight being the best disinfectant starts with just speaking truth as you see it. And that's the way that I'm processing through all of these things. But, I certainly think that you've got two kingdoms at work here. You've got the kingdom of darkness and you've got the kingdom of Christ. And we know who's going to win.
Yeah. Looking back to 5 years ago, maybe 6 now, Archbishop Vigano wrote and continues to write a number of letters speaking of the children of darkness and the children of light. And as I recall, many people thought of that as a kind of gentle ethical rhetoric back when it began. But I believe that for many, it's taken on a different meaning now, more in line with what you just described. There are literally things, for lack of a better term, that follow and are guided by the darkness. And there are others, hopefully, that are continuing to be guided and move to the light. And you went exactly where I thought we should go next, which is the concept of what do we do? I mean, where does all this leave us as it continues to unfold, as we learn more that may be, in some cases, frightening, is shocking, and troubling for even some of people we know, perhaps we don't know. What do we do? What tools do we have to, one, protect ourselves, two, fight back where we can in an appropriate way and to the best service to the light, if you will. So, Cathy, can I call on you for your thoughts there?
Well, intelligence insider Mark Phillips was working the highest levels of intelligence mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought. And he found our birthright information on mind brain function buried under national security. This information is pertinent to mental health. It's pertinent to the medical community. It's pertinent to society as a whole. Humanity needs to understand how their own brain works in order to safeguard against the manipulation that keeps leading us outside ourselves, leading us into their darkness and away from the divine victory that we have within us. When when I was being tortured, my spirit was always in a safe, loving space, and know that safe, loving space so well. It's like people say now, you must pray a lot. And it's like, my life's a prayer. It's a constant open freeway. Because of all that I experienced, that became like a freeway where I had that opportunity to be absolutely aligned with the divine, aligned with God, aligned with the victory, aligned with the reality and the truth that we have all been made perfect. We all have that victory within us. So when Mark Phillips found our birthright information on mind brain function buried under national security, he understood, like I know, that ultimately mind control is a spiritual warfare. That when we reclaim our free thought, we reclaim our ability to claim our victory, to start living our life's purpose, to align with that. The healing methods that Mark taught me, that's our birthright information. He reminded me of that. He didn't deprogram me. He reminded me we have all been blessed with resiliency of body, mind, and spirit. We have it within us to heal. Every one of us, no matter what we've experienced, no matter if we're just living in fear, no matter what has happened to us in life, what happens to us in life is not who we are. Who we are is still within us, divinely protected, waiting to be freed, waiting to be celebrated in the innocence of the beauty that we were created in. It's like the child in all of us. It's the innocence, that purity. It's all still there, waiting to be freed because we have been blessed with that kind of resiliency. I've just written my third book in my healing trilogy, Align with the Divine. And it's all about the perfect aspect of our brain. What we have so many other senses, intuitions, telepathic capabilities, the ability to see the future, to have a deep understanding of what's going on around us. We have heightened sensory vibration. We can feel the who's good and who's bad, like animals can, and animals can take us back to this natural capacity that we have within our own brains. As we bring all this into play, we start realizing that we have nothing to fear. Obviously, these perpetrators do. They're panicked and absolutely frantic right now. So the we've got the victory. We know God wins. We know from every angle and every aspect in every story that God wins. God won. In the ultimate timeline, the victory is already there. It's already within us all. So being able to heal from trauma is one thing. But a lot of survivors wondered, well, how can you smile? How can you be so joyous? How do you have so much peace? And it's because I know the truth. I know the victory. And I stay aligned with that divine. And I live that love. I live the love I am every day. I live my life's purpose. And I bring that truth to light. And so align with the divine is just a little bit of illustrations that help other survivors get to that point. And it's not just survivors of trauma. It's every single person on this planet needs to remember who they are, why they're here, gather their strength to human spirit. That's where we all unite and take a stand for the children's sake. It's up to us. They're counting on us. And we've got the ability to do it. We've been blessed with that all along. What an amazing time to be alive, to live our life's purpose right now and start protecting the children going forward and eradicate this darkness from this planet once and for all.
as you were saying that, that the thought struck me just before you said it, that isn't it amazing you're able to speak about these things the way you do, with the joy that you do, given everything you've been through. And it's a testimony to the fact that there is a beyond from these horrors. And as we learn other people that have had to go through it, it will, I think, fall to us in many cases to help them make that same progress. Yeah. Lynne, I know you and I have talked about the concept of authority on many occasions. Tell us your read and maybe some of your experiences, please, so that people can understand this and think about how they might be prepared or what they need to do to prepare themselves.
Absolutely. So I have a lot of experience in like practical tips that I give people when this topic comes up. And you'd asked also, Bill, about protection. I believe before we fight, we have to be protected with our armor. So every morning, there's prayers that I say. I take communion every morning. I remember what Jesus did for me. I armor up with Ephesians 6, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, loin girdle of truth, sandals of peace, shield of faith, pray in the Spirit all day, sword of the Spirit, pray in the Spirit all day long. So I armor up, literally, and keep that on. And so that's how I start protecting myself. And then the second way that I do it is I stay in it's like Cathy said, I just wanted to clap when Cathy got done. It's like, woo, we've got the victory. Praise God. And so part of what I do too is I listen to God. And I'm very aware of my surroundings. I'm very aware of, I've had several attempts on my life from before I started speaking to after. And I'm very aware of God guiding and directing me and keeping me safe and letting me know, go here, don't go here, be there, don't be there. And so, for example, one day I was doing a show right here, excuse me, and I had a FBI whistleblower on, and he had found Epstein level information, and he tried to get it to U.S. Department of Justice, and they would not touch it. Nobody would prosecute and touch it because it was too many high-level people were involved. And he's a very godly man, and he was shocked. He'd done all this work, which is, I guess in the FBI they have to volunteer to do it because, like David said, it's just very hard for people. It gives people PTSD that have to watch it. And so they fired him for this. They fired him for bringing this out. So he was a whistleblower. So I was sitting here doing the show, and I pray a lot, which is another powerful weapon. And show started 2 or 3 minutes in, and all of a sudden outside this window, a storm came up and tornado sirens went off. Well, I've been trained on that since I was little. That means you're in danger. There's tornadoes that have touched down, seek shelter. And I heard Holy Spirit crystal clear. And he said, if you seek shelter now, you will be in the greatest danger. He said, whatever you do, do not stop that show. He said, you keep that show going. So I had tornado sirens going off for an hour, and everything in the physical would say, seek shelter. But I had so much peace because I knew, I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I needed to stay right here. So I did that show. When the show was over, I got a text that I'd never gotten before from the utility company. And I'm sure everybody got it, but that there were power lines down everywhere. And it turned out that a tornado touched down a couple miles to the north of me, the south, the east, and the west. And if you guys know tornadoes, that's not what they do. They tend to go one direction. And so I was safe. And within a 2-mile radius of my house, hardly any damage, lots of damage outside of that. So that's the other way that I protect myself, and I encourage others to. It's like Cathy said, we need to be directly connected to God, and he will guide us and protect us and keep us safe and do all kinds of things to do so. When a few months before God activated me to speak in January of 2024, I was driving down there, and I didn't even know that God was going to activate me to speak 2 months from this moment, but I was on an interstate, and all of a sudden a truck came straight at me, and 2 inches from my a pickup truck, 2 inches from my driver's door, and I knew I was going to be dead soon because there was a mountain beside me, and it was coming straight at me. I was the only one on the road, and 2 inches from my car door, all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, me and my car were a half mile up the road, just like that. And that's God.
Wow.
And I was listening to a show at that moment, and because I couldn't orient to what on earth was happening around me. And I was listening to a show, and the man said, when you're attacked by witches, roar like a lion. So I went, roar. I didn't know what I was doing, it was just like all happening. And I went, roar. And because the pickup truck came after me again. So just because I was a half mile up the road, it wasn't stopping. The minute I went, roar, it backed way up. And I thought, okay, this is spiritual, this is supernatural. So that's how, examples of how I stay safe. And then how I fight back, it's like David was saying. I describe it that as believers, we have power, dominion, and authority over the enemy. Jesus defeated the enemy on the cross. That's it. 2,000 years ago. It's just the church has been infiltrated. Believers have been, and they don't realize the power, dominion, and authority that they have. So whenever demons attack, and that's just what they do. It's like dogs bark, demons attack. It's what they do. And so I'll have attacks. I was working one day here. I've got a fireplace right there, and it was about 5 a.m. And all of a sudden, I heard a demon coming down my fireplace, and it was this huge wing, and it went whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I mean, and so I bound it. And what I do is I bind demons, and I know, Bill, you've done the same thing. We talked about this, and I bind them, and I plead the blood of Jesus over them because it's one of the most powerful things anywhere. And then I command them to go to the feet of Jesus for judgment and dispensation, and they're gone. So anytime I have a demonic attack, that's what I do. I have Gracie, the cat, here in the house. Sometimes she's sleeping out. Sometimes she makes an appearance on shows. And she treed a demon at my front door. Probably it was the same night that you had an experience, Bill. And she had the thing treed. And I knew what it was. And so I got rid of it by the power, dominion, and authority that I have. And claiming Matthew 18:18, Jesus himself said that we have the keys to the kingdom. Whatever we allow on earth is allowed in the spiritual. Whatever we do not allow on earth is not allowed in the spiritual. And people don't realize that we have that authority. So what we speak, God created everything by his voice, the frequency. And what we speak and say, whether it's God's words or the enemy's words, the side of good or the side of evil, that's it. It tells angels and demons what to go out and start doing, which is the last thing I do is command angels. And we all have angels around us. I know most people can't see them, and I can, but everybody does. And scripture in the New Testament talks about how they're ministering spirits for believers, and they're waiting. It's kind of like they're crossing their arms and tapping their feet, like, give me something to do. They're military, they're God's army. They're the host of heaven. And so they want us to tell them what to do so that they can go and fight the spiritual battles, because I've seen and heard the spiritual battles in the heavenlies all over my town and where I go. So those are practical things to me. It's how I live my life and how I encourage people who might be, because I don't want anyone to be afraid now when they hear about the Epstein files or any of the other evil going on, because the fear is actually a demon too. I've seen that. So we don't want that thing around us either. But we have all these gifts that we've been given at our disposal, and we just need to start using them. And the enemy is so terrified of us. It's like Cathy was saying. I mean, they're terrified because they know that they're on the losing team. But as long as they can fake us out and make us think that they're all this big and bad and powerful thing, then they win. They get the more power in the spiritual realm. But we don't have to play along anymore with that. We can rise up and be who we've been made to be and defeat these people using spiritual weapons.
Wow, really encouraging. David, I know you've to me personally, you've suggested looking at the work of Derek Prince and others regarding authority and regarding battling in the spiritual vein, if you will. Tell us what your experiences or thoughts are regarding the use of authority in in the setting we're in today? I mean, how do we think about that? How do we, if we need to, how do we apply it if you can?
Yeah, again, I speak as someone's probably one of the least spiritually gifted people from, the supernatural stuff. But I also think that works in my favor because we're told faith is a great way to see God's power. So in my spiritual gifted weakness, I think I've still been able to see God work in my life in ways that's very, very powerful. It's a really weird paradox, right? That I would love to see the stuff that Lynn sees. But what I can tell you is that intuition, that whisper that we all hear, right to the heart. I tend to think through problems, and I think about the things that make me the most afraid, and I work those problems. And whether it's a prayer or meditation or just being consumed with the thought, and I think about like, oh, I don't want to be separated from my children. I got beautiful children, and how would I respond in a way that would be fearless in the event that someone tried to harm my kids or my wife, or, what if I were alerted to news that I'm not going to be here in 6 months? I mean, I think about kind of those black cloud topics a lot, not because I'm dwelling in this place of depression or anxiety. I find that peace comes with putting those things to death because they don't serve any purpose. I can't control them. And then you can live. So when I was a prosecutor, I put someone away that, executed his girlfriend in front of their children. And, there's another drug cartel guy put away, and my victim advocates would come and say, we've been listening to jail calls. Boy, your name came up a lot. And I'm like, okay, well, what did they say? Oh, they told me about all the terrible things they're going to do to you when they get out. And, so I would listen to those things. You kind of have to master your fears. And, I've had some close calls with death in the past, some of it's self-induced from a wilder time, but, I'm just thankful that I have a heart that can beat. And I know that one day it's going to stop thumping, at least in the here and now. And I'm grateful for the breath that I can draw. I know that that's a miracle. Everything about living life is a miracle. The smile that I get from my kids, it's like a painting, I mean, so I try to treasure all of these things that I can derive joy from and marvel at. And as I get older and I think about the next phase of my life, things that I used to walk past, I don't walk past anymore. And I find that helps me just maintain a equilibrium. So, putting to death fear. And it's okay. It's okay that there's another chapter ahead of us. And that allows you to operate in a way that's I think a little bit more productive. And then the other thing I'll say is that, when I was a kid, if someone were to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, if I was being honest, I wanted to be a knight. I wanted to be a knight in shining armor. I think about that kid and to slay dragons and to find your true love and to be an ambassador for something bigger. And so each day, even though I don't get to put on the physical armor, I don't get to hold a real sword, I look for burdens that God gives me. And I think he gives me those burdens because he wants me to work on them to alleviate suffering with people around me. And I feel meaning when I do that. So every day I get up, I really fixate on, all right, what problem do you want me to solve? And I don't want it to be abstract. I want you to actually use me for good, where someone's life's a little bit better than it was. And that's really been the past 5 years is finding meaning in, this heart. If it's heavy, that's probably a good thing. If you've got a heavy heart about something, I think that's just God saying, that's what I want you to focus on, because that hurt you're feeling, I feel that same hurt. And so little things. I mean, there's nothing I think earth shaking about anything that I shared with you, but my wife smiling or laughing is treasure. And doing something that's worthwhile each day it's a good day. And just keep stacking those days, one
That's
after
right.
the other. And
That's right. I will concur very much with that. I think I've felt that very deeply over these last 5 years, because I was like many. I went through the first 90% of my life, worried about the things that you worry about day in and day out, learning a living and, taking care of the car and doing all the regular stuff. And then these last 5 years have gradually but quickly become much more meaningful, I think. And I, just as you had mentioned, some days it's sitting back quietly and saying, okay, what's next, please? I'm listening. So before we break, I wanted to, I'm sure people are saying, gosh, this is starting to ring true to me, because I believe that if my instinct is correct, that people's ears and eyes are becoming more open. They will want to learn more from each of you. And so I'd like to share some information on where they can keep up with you all, and have you add to that if we need to make sure that people know where to go. So in no particular order, Lynn, I'll start with you. This is your YouTube account, and congratulations on getting this stood up. This is relatively brand new.
Yeah, it is.
So there's this, and I know you also have a site, and it's going to be right in line with something that Cathy mentioned, which is the notion of treating things like PTSD, and that is QGRIT. So tell us about this quickly, and then if there's anything else that you want people to know, let's share that with them, please.
This is for 2 or 3 years before God activated me to speak. He gave me the aftercare plan for the little ones once they're rescued from trafficking. And that's what this website is. I just took everything he told me and put it in this website, and also to help adults with trauma of any kind. So I list the different ways that I heal, the different modalities that I used, the LifeWave technology that's helped me so much and other people. And then I list what to do, how to recognize if a child's being trafficked or harmed, what to do and not do. So I have lots of, and what people can do to help. I have lots of tips and recommendations and ideas. And if people have questions about anything, there's a contact page that they can reach me at.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that work.
Thank you, Bill.
Cathy, this is, I believe, your X account. And so I started here, and then my understanding is one of your main pages is this, transformation.com. Hopefully I get that one right. Tell us what folks can find here, if you could, please.
All of my books are listed here, and links to the Audible versions. I read every book myself to preserve the integrity of information. I've got a blog post that I post quite regularly that empowers people to understand what in the world is going on today and where the roots of the corruption are. I've got PTSD, Time to Heal, posted there. It's the birthright information that Mark Phillips found buried under national security. It was my experience to heal with it, so I can release it. He couldn't. He was bound by laws of sedition. But I released it. I used it. It's our birthright information. Anyway, it's posted there. Everyone can have it and apply it. It's a workbook. It's just a way to be able to start your healing process. My other book, Align with the Divine, right there. That's just my newest release. And my testimony for Congress, 1995 testimony, Transformation of America. National security was invoked on it. Of course it was. Bill Clinton was president at the time, and a lot of it deals with the Clintons. But that's available there. You can contact me through my website. So there's also events listed where I'm going to be speaking next. And my voice is out there a lot these days. So I encourage people to come and listen and get the information, and any information they get, research further, because the more they know, the more they'll see how absolutely inexcusable it is we allow this dark negative energy force to meddle with our brilliant minds and lives anymore. we got the victory. It's ours. Time to live it.
David, this is your X page, and pardon me, I know you do almost weekly releases on your the Professor's Records series on X and Rumble and YouTube, and then especially your Substack is a great place to go to get your latest writings and thoughts. Anywhere else that they should look?
No, that covers, I mean, the professorsrecord.com, all of the social media tabs are on the homepage. So if you're not on X or Substack, I really appreciate people going to Substack though, because that's really the only place that I've gone thus far where I haven't had to deal with quite as much censorship and throttling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just anyone that wants to follow along, it's free for all. And if people want to sponsor the work, I think it's the cost of a couple cups of coffee. So it helps me make these videos. I'm in the throes of editing this weekend's video and article. And, it's another kind of mind bender, and hopefully it'll come together. I'm always a little nervous before I put them out, because it's, there's a lot of things that I'm processing and trying to land safely. But this Sunday, you can expect an article on the singularity, which is something that Elon has talked about, that point in which artificial intelligence is moving so fast that they're going to kind of have a stranglehold on how humanity goes forward, and what I think is a potential solution, which is divine intelligence. And as long as divine intelligence informs artificial intelligence, we'll be okay. And so I won't spoil much more, but without God, we don't exist. And without humanity, AI doesn't exist. And I think AI might just be smart enough to figure that out.
Yep. I've heard, well, I won't spoil it yet. I'll wait till your thing and we'll talk again. I think it was Kurzweil who may have written the first writings regarding the concept of singularity. So this will be fascinating. Thank you for that. We've spent a very interesting, it's an hour and a half has flown by. We have touched maybe the first half inch of the ocean of this. And I am hoping that at some point in the not distant future, we can get back together and continue this discussion and journey. As I'm sitting here, I'm reminded of, when more than two gather in my name, I will be there. And I'm hoping that that's in fact the case. Could I ask a favor? David, could you take a moment and perhaps offer a prayer for us as we close?
Would love to. Dear Lord, I just thank you for Bill as the steward of this show. And I just thank you for these lovely women that are such an inspiration in their own right. I just feel so blessed to be a part of this. And I pray for justice and vindication. A lot of times we talk about justice in the kind of cosmic hereafter. I really want both of these women to see justice before then. I know there's so many other victims that have been through hell, Lord, and we would love to see a new season where we're wide awake and we can see evil for what it is, and we can live in a long period of blessing. I pray that for our children and our children's children, that this would be a generational blessing. So Lord, I just pray that you would give us courage, that we would avail ourselves of your mind and how we problem solve. And I pray that you would fill our hearts with love that's overflowing, and that we could just, we would just offer up a sweet aroma wherever we go, whoever we come into contact with, that we would make this earth a little bit more like heaven just by how we act, treat each other. And so Lord, we ask for that blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you once again for all three of you being with us today, and God bless each of you and protect you as we go forward. And we'll look forward to perhaps our next chance to get together and continue this amazing journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.